Hi, everyone. Thank you so much for coming on to stream with us. We've been having quite the discussion about animals and who would be the best martial artist. I'm here today, joined with my co host right above me in this little window, Alan. Thanks so much for coming on, Alan. We really appreciate you taking the time.
Hi, thanks. Yeah, it's a pleasure to be on here.
Now, you're well known to our community. There are two people in our current chat right now who are, I believe, still in the same home you are in, and you're all sharing the same internet.
I believe they're about 4 feet just that direction currently.
That's hilarious. Well, that's great. Yeah, I see your daughter already in chat saying hi to you and things along those lines. We've loved having them for Monday Movie Club, so I'm glad we could. I don't know if this was a surprise to them or not, but it was been good to have you as part of our crew today, as well as a few other people, of course, that know you from various Doxa events and St. Andrews events and things along those lines. So um, we're really happy to have you here. Uh, for those who may not know you, who are either watching right now but maybe not in chat or coming just onto chat right now, I have a bit of a rapid fire question for you. A couple questions, just so that we can get to know you a bit more, your kind of movie, uh, TV history in a way, if you wouldn't mind doing that. If you have any questions, um, maybe not embarrassing ones, family, but any other questions that you would like Alan to answer, feel free to put them in chat and we'll see if we can get to them tonight. Okay. So, first question: what was your favorite TV show that you're watching right now?
Well, favorite TV show that I'm watching right now. My daughter and I just finished the TV show, so we were watching the remake of Voltron. So we enjoyed that quite a bit. We're watching The Mandalorian as a family, and then kind of most of what I watch alone is Forged in Fire, which is like those baking shows, except instead of baking food, they bake knives and historic recreations of weapons. And I'm dumbfounded by the skill that people have to take like a lump of steel and turn it into something beautiful.
That's awesome. I love that you and your daughter are watching Voltron. I grew up entirely a fan of the old Voltron and did rewatch the Netflix remake. So I love that you guys just finished it. The nerd of
Yeah.
me is like really excited about that.
At some time offline, we'll have to talk about that final episode because yeah, that was something.
That was something, man. Yeah. If money and current COVID restrictions were not an issue, what would you do all day?
Honestly, I'd probably do what I already do all day in terms of the job that I do. So working with Youth Unlimited and partnering with a church. The only difference would be, I guess, I would be able to kind of use some of those resources to make certain things happen that I'd love to make happen. But you know, God's probably smarter than I am. He's probably giving me the resources I need, not the resources I want. So yeah.
Awesome. And what was the first movie you saw in theaters?
Yeah, I'm going to answer it in kind of three ways. So the first movie I saw, I remember almost nothing about it. It's from 1984 and 1985. It's a Christmas movie. I don't even think it was the first year it was in theaters. All I really remember is that it was about a family and they're on hard times and the dad dies and the mom's trying to keep everything together. And it was my first introduction to chocolate covered raisins, which I did not like. The first one I remember watching like as a movie in the theater was The Rescuers Down Under.
Love it.
And then the first movie I went to without adult supervision was Cool Runnings.
Really? Was it Cool Runnings?
Mm-hmm.
Was that just you and a bunch of buddies went to go see it, or or was it just you by yourself without parents?
Me with one friend, and we sat in the front row, so we had to sit lean like this because the screen was right there.
That's awesome. Oh man, that's great. Well, thank you so much. Our first question, actually, you suggested because apparently your church has a bit of a reputation when it comes to Kung Fu Panda. Um, and talk to me about that. You had a day camp. We talked briefly about this. You had a day camp, and someone came up with some sort of character-based system for all the counselors at the day camp?
Well, so what it started with was with the Doxa Day Camp staff at St. Andrew's Presbyterian Church Scarborough. One of the staff members, he in our WhatsApp group would refer to himself as Master Oogway, who of course is from Kung Fu Panda.
Right.
And he's a very patient and wise individual. He's not here, so I can say that about him, say nice things behind his back. And so he really fits a Master Oogway. His name is David. And then what happened this summer is one of the younger staff, he picked up on this and he thought, oh, here's my chance to be the hero of the story. He didn't say that, but I know what he was thinking. So he sat down and he assigned to each of the staff members a different character. So he had, one of our staff, Sarah, was Tigress, and another one was Kirishatan, who we call Cricket. He was Mantis, so the bug connection. I was Shifu because, I teach them, so that made sense. But it was really all set up so he could make himself Poe. Now, what I do have to say about this young man is, yes, Poe is the best fit for which character he would be in that movie. That is true. But it was all kind of a pretense to kind of just make himself the hero of the story, which I personally found extremely hilarious. I guess we should ask which character they think they would be in the movie.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Or how about you, Sue? Who do you think you are?
Oh goodness. I don't really have an idea there. I would love to be, I think I'd be like Cobra just because like I'm a support. I want to like help other people. Like you kind of see her like aiding other people and only really stepping up by herself when needed. And
Mm-hmm.
I kind of really work along those lines. I like to kind of uplift other people. Um, this live stream is just me trying to help other people have a conversation about movies. So I think that's the one I kind of relate. And she's kind of quiet and like you don't really hear from her a lot. And I feel like if I were in this universe, I kind of play either that or just a patron at the noodle shop because I like food. Those are kind of like supporting roles for me. Would kind of be where I would be at. But yeah, let's open it up to chat with our first question of which character would you be from this movie? There are lots to pick from. I mean, we got the Furious Five, various members there. We got Poe, Master Shifu, Master Yugwe. Um, I mean, Tai Lang. If you really feel like you'd be in a bit of a a bind there, that's definitely an option for many. Um, yeah, Tai Lun, Amy, we see you there. Um, uh, Mangokin, maybe Crane. He seems more quiet than the others, but talks when prompted. All right, fair.
I
Um,
could see, because Crane is really the first one to start being kind and accepting to Poe of all the Furious Five. So Mango, I think that is in your personality, right? To be the first one to accept somebody for who they are.
yeah. Amy, Master Shifu's temperament, lacking patience. I feel like a lot of us who are parents or have worked with small kids recognize the lack of parent patience that Shifu has. Sometimes it gets that way. I think even our young people, like you just get into circumstances where you understand the whole like raise your hands and need to walk away moment there. Um, uh, you are being called out in chat, Alan, as you are his dad because you like noodles. Would that be a more accurate description than Shifu?
It seems to me that all the characters in the movie seem to like the secret ingredient soup with the noodles, so I'm not sure that narrows it down that much. Um, yeah, but I think uh, in terms of, is it Mr. Ping? See, this is why I have a cheat sheet up here.
Oh, good. I'm glad you have a cheat sheet.
Yeah.
See,
Um,
the unofficial game of Movie Club is Sue forgets the character's name, and Movie Club helps her remember. That's
yeah.
that's the secret name of the
Yeah.
game here.
Yeah. Mr. Ping is very like tightly wound
Mm,
and and I think kind of trend towards the other end of that personality spectrum.
all right, fair.
We all have our moments, but yeah, I'm probably more towards the the Uguay. Um, so Tammy, there's not really any secret to my ramen. I take Mr. Noodles, I make it, and then I'll put like an egg and hot sauce in it, or some cheese, and
There you
yeah.
go.
You can put almost anything in ramen, and it'll taste good.
Yeah. I always just used to just make the package and just be like, I guess this is it. I actually haven't eaten miso noodles or ramen since middle school. It was the cheapest lunch you could buy at the
Yeah,
middle school Friday buy day.
it's a good way to repurpose leftovers. So you've got like some leftover chicken, and you can put that in the ramen noodles. And because it's so full of salt, it just tastes like wonderful MSG. So
Okay, it's going on the grocery list for next week, guys. I'm gonna go get me some ramen. Uh, our next question, kind of to go into this, we see a lot of this theme of acceptance and kind of accepting ourselves, accepting one another. And so I kind of pose this question to chat as well as to us here on stream. But what does acceptance mean? How do we define it?
that is a good question, because we might need to look at it in a few different ways. I think a lot of times, a lot of people think acceptance means tolerance, but I don't think tolerance is all that nice. Um, Tolerance is, that older sibling that lets the younger sibling tag along. They're like, well, I don't really want you here, but I'm forced to, so I'm tolerating your presence.
Mm,
That's not really nice. That's just like putting up with it because you have to. That's tolerance. I think acceptance is actually seeing somebody for who they are and loving them for who they are. Saying like, okay, this is what you're like. This is who you are. So if we think in terms of the movie, right? Poe is not a conventional martial artist, or certainly not at the start, right? He's loud, he's brash, he gets out there in terms of just trying things and makes a lot of mistakes. He trashes the kitchen. Um, that would certainly rub me the wrong way. Um, and and yet they begin to accept him for who he is and care for him for who he is as the movie continues on. So to me, acceptance goes a little deeper than tolerance, and acceptance probably has something to do with love. But once you get into love, it's interesting because it's not just saying, well, okay, this is the way you are, and I accept you, but it's also trying to help somebody to grow as well. So it doesn't mean that you tolerate every behavior that somebody engages in. It doesn't mean you're like, yeah, it's okay for you to like punch holes in the wall of my room. No, that's not okay. But I still, you're still part of our group, part of the family, right?
right. Tammy, I like what you're saying. Just the very, very simple, like being valued by others. Like there's a value or worth to acceptance. Like tolerating a person, I can tolerate a lot of behavior. I think of, I have the example of a toddler. I bring him up a lot. Um, Sorry to future toddler son who might be watching this on future date. Um, but I tolerate the fact that my toddler has bad behavior. I don't accept the bad behavior. I don't allow the bad behavior or value that behavior highly. Um, yeah, but acceptance has a bit of like a worth piece to it, where you're saying
Mm-hmm.
this is important, right, to one
I think
way or
it.
another.
I think it goes beyond the outward appearance too.
Hmm.
It's actually getting to know somebody really for who they are.
Yeah. Amy, you see other people the way God sees them. So true. I think of just that idea. Like sometimes it's really hard to look at the world and look at specific individuals, either how they're portrayed in media or like well known people in our world, and just be like, how does God see that individual? How does God love that individual? And having to try to reconcile that, um, and kind of come to acceptance there, right? Um, Good or bad, right? Um, some people are easier to love than others, which is actually a really good segue into our next question, which is what does it, let me fix this. See, this is why I need a proof reader. What does it look like to love and accept others when it's difficult? So I think it's really easy for us to kind of understand this idea of Um, some people are just really difficult to love and really difficult to accept. So, what does it look like to accept or love a person when it's a challenge? Thank you, Amy, for the. I'll send you my PowerPoint for next live stream, and you can proofread it for me. Um, I hope you all can still accept me, even though I make terrible grammar and spelling mistakes.
Well, if they find it hard to accept someone just based on their grammar, that's a pretty high bar
That's a high
there.
standard.
Yeah. Yeah, especially with all the smart tools we have now. I found my grammar and spelling skills just atrophying
Oh yeah,
month over month.
autocorrect was the worst for any sort of language development we've ever needed to do because
Yeah.
it just corrects it for you. Um, yeah, I find this question very kind of on brand, difficult to answer, just because I feel like it will look different depending on why the other individual is difficult, right? If it's
Mm.
difficult because you have a different worldview or different perspective on something, then maybe loving and accepting that person is just being willing to not agree but still have some sort of relationship with them. If it's difficult because someone's hostile towards you, that's a bit different to look at, right? Um, I do like what some of the people are saying here. What are your thoughts, Alan?
Yeah, it reminds me, I'm not going to use a name here to protect the innocent, but it reminds me of high school band. So in grade 9 high school band, I was in the alto saxophone section. So
Oh,
there
you
was
were the
three
cool
of
kid.
us. Um, I, I don't know what to say. You know, we didn't get good parts in our band, but maybe the trumpets and the clarinets seemed to get all the good parts, and we
Really?
were
Is that how
mostly
it worked?
just like hold
My
this
high
whole
school
note.
band, the cool kids were the saxophonists and the trumpet players. And then the really nerdy people were the ones who played various clarinets and um, whoever was stuck on like trombone. Like we were the nerdums.
Mm. Um, so of the three of us,
Mm-hmm.
I became extremely good friends with one of them, and the other one, he would just needle me all class long, every single class. He was just that kind of person. And one time I almost snapped at him. I was raised with kind of a lot of expectations about like being kind to people. So my being annoyed and frustrated might be a little less demonstrative than other people. And I almost just turned around and let this guy have it one class. And I felt convicted about that. So I started praying for him every day, before and after the class and at night, and just actually petitioning God like on his behalf for his success and health and all those sorts of things. And God actually changed my heart about him. And it doesn't mean his behavior was any less challenging,
Right.
but my reaction to his behavior changed a lot because instead of it bothering me, it didn't internalize like that. It was just kind of like, okay, you know, I'll wait this out until I can find something I can say kind to respond to or something like that. It stopped bothering me and I began to accept him. So for me, looking like when it's difficult, it was a process. It didn't happen immediately, and it involved God actually changing something inside of me, uh,
Absolutely.
developing patience for that individual. I just see a comment here from Tammy that I think is really worth highlighting here. I don't
Mm-hmm.
know if you saw that, where she said, it's hard to love and accept others when they don't feel grateful towards your actions.
Absolutely.
Yeah. We all have those little buttons, right? When it makes it hard to, like, I know that's not necessarily a button for me. I don't necessarily need to hear thankful. But what drives me crazy is people who don't take care of other people.
Mm.
That's when I can get really angry with somebody, where I see them just like being careless about somebody else's feeling.
Right.
That's when I have a hard time accepting someone.
Absolutely. I kind of relate a bit to the whole idea of not being grateful, but I think Tammy, in your next comment, you kind of hit it on the head. But it's like, but having grace and mercy towards them, I
Mm-hmm.
think, is a key aspect of acceptance and love. Right? Is this idea of really allowing your own heart to be changed and being gracious, being merciful, kind of being willing to see that person and just be like, look, I don't love this, but like, I still love you.
Yeah.
And kind of being willing to, they're on their own path, their own journey, and they got to walk through whatever they have to walk through. And that's separate from me, but I'll still be there for them.
Well,
Um,
isn't it interesting? Instead of like correcting somebody harshly, probably accepting them is going to be the best bet for helping change that behavior.
right.
Because if you accept them and you build that relationship, now suddenly you have that currency to speak into their lives and be like, "Hey, like I notice you punch your microphone a lot, um, and maybe you should consider not doing that."
Right. And sometimes the healing process takes some time, you know? Maybe it
Yeah.
takes a while for the person to understand where their hands end. And so they got to learn a new habit. And this could be applied to many other things other than microphone hitting. But
It was just timely. I just happened to
it's
punch
a
my
wonderful
microphone, but I was looking for
live
an example.
example of accepting you even though you do that.
Yeah.
No. And I think it's really important to um, kind of just be really gracious and um, just being willing to be with a person even though they're working through stuff. I mean, we know from, I think, our own lives, if we look at who we are as people, like there is stuff that we're probably not proud of, bad habits we have, ways that we treat our own selves, sinful behaviors, behaviors that hurt others and our own people, who it'll take time to be able to grow out of those things and for God to work with us to get through that stuff. And so if we
Yeah.
allow ourselves to kind of be like, look, I'm working on this, having that kind of mindset with somebody else too can really help us in regards to loving and accepting them as well.
Mm-hmm.
Um, yeah, great thoughts in here. There are a lot of really great kind of reflections about when's it difficult and how we do that. And it seems really easy to say and sometimes hard to act on, but I think also having people where it's easier to turn to when you're having a bad time too, like being in community and being connected, being able to
Yeah.
share is huge as well in regards to that. Awesome. Thanks, everybody. We're going to jump to this final question before we go to our final thought. Where has the time gone? Oh, my goodness. Um, our final question of the night: why is it sometimes easier to love others than to love ourselves? I know I struggle with this quite a bit. I've had for my whole entire life, where when God says, love your neighbor as yourself, the love your neighbor part wasn't the difficult part. The love yourself part was the difficult part for me to wrap my head around. And it just feels that way sometimes, I think, for a good portion of us to be kind of that gracious and merciful person for somebody else. But then in our own heads, we kind of like, oh, you did that again. Like we're not as kind to ourselves as we are to somebody else, right? Um, so I think it's a big piece there. Amy, I like what you said. I think self-esteem or lack thereof is a big issue. I think, yeah, how much worth you put on yourself or how much value on yourself can definitely affect this kind of thing. But why it's sometimes easier or harder to love ourselves when loving others is a bit easier for us or less challenging.
We talked about seeing others with God's eyes, and yet sometimes we feel like it doesn't apply to us. So Jeff Smythe, who both Sue and I work with, he, when he catches this behavior in me, not that it ever happens, he just says, "Who died and made you God?" Right? Like God's our judge. We're not our judge.
Mm,
We're not other. It's God who is Jesus, who is the judge. So it's very interesting that we want to apply this double standard. We want to somehow in ourselves, in our own strength, be perfect. And that we somehow know better than the Holy Spirit about that healing process that God is taking all of his followers on, making them more and more into what they were created to be. And while it's, I think, easier for us to learn the discipline to look at other people with God's eyes, it's harder for us to do it. And we want to somehow be in control of our own growth process instead of trusting it to God. And so we try to measure ourselves, and we'll always run short, right? We'll always. Um,
Yeah, there's a comment that's just come in, and I do want to highlight it
mm,
because I think it speaks a lot of truth from Mangokin. We know ourselves a lot better than each other. We remember
mhm,
all the bad stuff we did, thought,
mhm.
and said, and we just pile it on ourselves to no end, filling us with overwhelming, ran out of characters.
Oh, and then she continues
Guilt
guilt.
that makes
Yeah,
us collapse in on ourselves. Yeah, like I think like huge wisdom win there, Mangokin. I think that's very, very insightful. Well done.
yeah. That's actually the journey that Shifu is on. As he's so in this movie, one of his big themes is he's trying to find inner peace, right? And the dragon warrior coming along and defeating Tai Lung is going to be what brings him into peace. And Shifu, you think he's this grumpy old man. He's disconnected from the students. He's genuinely cruel to Poe in the beginning. Um, so angry and so impatient. And what it really is guilt. And it's guilt over this, what he thinks is a mistake that he made, right? Where he's like, well, he out of kindness adopted this cub, Tai Lung, and he sees his talent and training, and he builds him up, and he doesn't realize until it's too late that Tai Lung is turned into a monster,
Mm.
right? And Shifu is so angry and disconnected, right? And you see it in his relationship with Tigress and his relationship with Poe because of the guilt and unacceptance that he's carrying around. And in his final battle before, Poe has his realization when Shifu has his battle with Tai Lung, towards the end, he asks for forgiveness. And it's very interesting that the writers put that in there because they're very clever to put it in where he's asking Tai Lung to forgive him, but genuinely he's forgiving himself
Mm.
in that moment. And you see his demeanor change, or at least until the second movie. But you see his demeanor change. He comes to peace because he forgives himself for everything that's happened. And that forgiveness then allows everyone around him to flourish. And Tai Lung is the opposite of that, right? He is unwilling to accept being anything other than the top, right? If he's not the dragon warrior, no one else can be.
Right.
And he's unwilling to accept himself for who he is, as a, powerful and incredible martial artist, but not the dragon warrior.
Right.
And so he doesn't learn the lesson that Shifu does. And,
Mm.
you know, ultimately to his demise.
Yeah, for sure. I like Tammy's point too. When you see others, you tend to always want to be like others. So you
Mm-hmm.
try to change yourself to be like others. And that
Mm-hmm.
really, I think, is more reflective on Poe's experience, right? We see him at the beginning of the movie idolizing the Furious Five,
Yeah.
and he's trying so hard to be like them. And it's
Mm-hmm.
not until the secret of the scroll is revealed. So if we didn't say it out the top, I just totally remembered we forgot to go and remind guidelines and things like that. This is a spoiler zone. So if you haven't watched the movie, and I know one of you hasn't yet, it's okay, but we are going to spoil things. This is a spoiler. It's not spoiler free. So warning a little late, and I apologize. um, but when he realizes that the secret ingredient to the soup or the secret of the dragon scroll is just to be yourself,
Mm-hmm.
then he's finally able to release all that stuff he wanted to be in others, right? And so I
Mm-hmm.
think uh, that's so, I think, also spot on. That can make it really difficult for us to love ourselves because we see and kind of idolize what others have and then try to be that person rather than the people that we are ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah. I actually love in that final battle. Also, you see all the things that Poe is come into play and they pay off so many beats. Like the acupuncture, how they can't find his nerves,
Right.
right? And that's the one thing. That's how Tai Lung defeats the Furious Five. It's nerve attack, but he can't find the nerves on Poe.
And it
Or
just
even
tickles.
the Yeah, or even at the very beginning where he's the training. So Thailand punches him, he bounces back just like the training dummy. It's like, oh, you're paying off all the things. His love of food and chopsticks and keep away, and ultimately his love of kung fu plays into it as well with the uh, aforementioned whooshy finger. Is it whooshy? Yeah, I think it's whooshy.
There's been a bit of a debate due to autocorrect in chat, but wushi is what has been determined, not sushi.
I
Um,
can tell you that in the captions on Netflix, it was spelled Wuxi, so that would be whooshy, I suppose.
wushi, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. It's been, yeah. I think this is definitely, there's a lot about loving others and accepting others, but also about truly accepting ourselves that I really appreciated about this movie.
Mm-hmm.
About a willingness to kind of be vulnerable. It really was to a point where Poe had to be vulnerable enough to just be like, this is who I am, panda and all, before he could finally get through the training and become him at the end, right? Um,
Mm-hmm.
and I do really appreciate that kind of a message when it feels like sometimes media is telling you just to become something else. You know, there's a lot of pressures from advertisements and other films, other media about what idealistically people for to strive for or to become. And I really loved the idea that this film was just like, no, just be you and do what you're designed to be. I know they didn't use that language, but we know that God creates us all very uniquely
Mm-hmm.
and creates us for great purposes. And it's important that we strive for the purpose in which He created, not what the world tells us is important. Um,
Yeah.
so I loved having that message in a film like this. It was awesome.
Yeah. As much as we'd all love to be like LeBron James, the world would be boring and also not work at all if everyone was LeBron James.
Absolutely. My toddler is
We
very
we
upset he
only need
cannot be
one.
Michael Jordan. And I just told him, look, you won't be exactly like Michael Jordan. You will be the best you can be. And if that's basketball, great. And if it's not, you got to pick something else. And he refuses. So I assume basketball is going to be the thing we do, but we will see. For sure. Let me open the floor to you, Alan. You had a bit of a for our final thought tonight. We wanted to give you some space about this kind of theme, but then also where um, the Bible kind of opens up and talks about. So let me open the floor to you tonight.
Yeah. So I wanted to look really quickly at 1 Samuel 16. So this is when God's prophet and the last of God's judges, Samuel, has had this tragic thing. Actually, he's kind of like a Shifu character, right? So he raises up the first king, Saul, and Saul's a disappointment, right? He's everything that's wrong. Even though when you looked at Saul, just like Tai Lung, he looks like the perfect martial artist. Saul looked like the perfect king, taller than everybody else around. He looks humble. He's good looking. He's well spoken. He's good at fighting, and all these sorts of things that show up. He even prophesies, right, with the Holy Spirit before Saul gets anointed as king. But even though he looks like the right person to be a king, and everyone around has been like, yeah, he's the guy you pick. He's the LeBron James of our day. He wasn't. He wasn't the guy because inside his heart wasn't right for it, and the power corrupted him. And so Samuel, heartbroken, gives the message to King Saul and says, God has rejected you, and he's going to put somebody else on the throne with a heart like his heart. And so Samuel goes into Bethlehem and meets this guy by the name of Jesse. And Jesse has all these sons. And he has this, kind of cloak and dagger way of going. He's like, oh, I'm going to, help them with their sacrifice and feast and all those sorts of things. And Jesse starts bringing his sons ahead of him. So I'm going to read verse 6 here. So the oldest son, Eliab, is the one that goes first. And so Samuel says, when they came, he looked on Eliab and thought, surely this is the Lord's anointed. Surely the Lord's anointed is before him. But the Lord said to Samuel, do not look at his appearance or on the height of his stature, because I have rejected him. For the Lord sees not as man sees. Man looks on the outward appearance, but the Lord looks at the heart. And so, yeah, Samuel is kind of the sheep who actually, I didn't connect all those dots when I was preparing this, but actually it works really well. So then there's another son and another son, another son. And everyone, they're tall, they're good looking. They seem like they'd be good leaders. And God's just like, nope, 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 nope. And he seems to be out of sons to look at. It's like, but God said it's going to be one of your sons. Do you have another one? And Jesse's like, well, there's the worthless one out with the sheep. So it's a little one in our translations. It's kind of nice. Jesse's not being nice to his son. He's prejudged his son. He's like, that weirdo? The guy who just like dances around and sings with his harp all day. And then like when a bear or a lion comes, he actually like fights it with it. Like, who does that? He's a weird kid. You sure you want to look at this kid? But what Jesse didn't see, God did, and God showed to Samuel, because he had a heart like God's heart. And if you read the rest of David's life, you know he's a very flawed man. He makes some massive mistakes. But the way he's different is he has a tender heart, and he's willing to learn and be taught and grow. Kind of like Poe in that way as well, right? And so even though when you looked on the outward appearances, he'd be the last one you pick, God knows something more, and he knows he's the right person for the job. And I think when we need to look at a movie like this, or look at life, or look at the situation with Saul and Samuel, we need to understand, or Saul and Samuel and David, that God has made us in a certain way. He's called us to certain things, and he wants us to look at ourselves with his eyes, and he wants us to look at others again with his eyes and see who they're created to be and the beauty that's there. It's not that God didn't love Saul or Eliab or any of these people. They just weren't the right person for the job, right? Their call was something else. God created them to be something else. God created David to be a shepherd, but not a shepherd of a flock, a shepherd of a nation. And his heart was tender and right for the job. So I think that's the challenge for us. And, you know, even later when we look at David's mistakes, we see some of the wounds that come from his father's attitude about him, and some of the healing that has to happen, and how it eventually happens in his life. And it's beautiful. And I think I've gone a little further than I want to go on that for now, but just as something you can look deeper. You want to go to the next level on this, keep reading, and you can see how David still has some learning and growth to do in terms of seeing himself the way God sees him.
Yeah. I think that's the important thing to look at when we're being called into leadership or called to do something, is that we're not expected to be perfect. You know, the only person who's called to be perfect is God.
Mm-hmm.
But we're expected to be at least teachable so that we can learn and grow as we move forward towards our call. Thank you, Alan. This was great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I loved how our chat was connecting the dots about different characters, of how this actual history is a little bit reflective on the art of the film we just watched. And so I think is a huge huge kind of cool thing. I don't think that was one thing that we thought of when you picked for Samuel at this particular point.
Yeah, and just kind of as I got going, I'm like, oh yeah, it really connects. And David's kind of a fanboy, and Poe's got, like, they both got that warrior poet thing going on.
Yeah, they
And
both kind of
yeah,
do. They're both
yeah.
kind of considered, oh yeah, the guy who makes noodles, whatever. The
Oh yeah, the father has a plan for the life, but that's not where they're gonna go.
no,
Oh, there's layers to
there's a
this.
lot here. Were
Yeah.
the makers of Kung Fu Panda inspired by the history of David's calling? I wonder if that's at all possible.
It, you know what? So I mean, my degree in university is in English, and I always appreciate when a writer takes care in the story they're crafting, even if it's a silly funny story like Kung Fu Panda. And there's actually a lot of care taken in writing this thing.
Yeah.
I'm not claiming it's Shakespeare, but there's a little more depth here than there had to be, and I appreciate that.
Well, and that's the thing I really like about films is that, and like movies, is that it's a medium in which sometimes things are just fun and entertaining. But then if they're done with this, you're right, this care, then there are kind of these deeper thoughts and these deeper kind of things that you can reflect on after the fact that make it kind of worth a
Mm-hmm.
rewatch. I find like the ones that have a little bit more thought put into them, even though they're just it's a panda who does kung fu. Like on the surface, like not very like it's just entertaining. They're
Yeah.
more likely I'm gonna rewatch that than something that's just you know fun for one time.
One other realization, ironically, there's less toilet humor in Kung Fu Panda than there is in The Life of David.
Yes,
But I'll leave that to you to find by reading your Bibles.
that's right. Your own quest to finding that. Well, before we end tonight and announce our next live stream movie, we have a couple announcements. So first one is that this Friday is actually our virtual Doxa Christmas gathering. So because it's the first Friday of December, we're getting together on the Doxa YouTube page. So just type Doxa Toronto into YouTube. You'll find us right away. And the link will be up at least by the afternoon. So you'll have access to that. And that starts at Friday, December 4th at 7:30 p.m. Feel free to come early, like 7:15, 7:10 ish. And for those who do, we usually have like trivia or a game going in the chat to kind of get everyone together and things like that. So please feel free to come early so you can participate in that game, not just the game that happens on stream. Another thing with this one is that this is going to go with an after party Zoom call. We haven't had one of those since summer. So, a time for us to kind of reconnect and have fun together and things along those lines. So, please check out Doxa Toronto's YouTube page for a video by our very own Alice that is here in chat, kind of describing the after party details. And your youth leaders will have the links to that call. So, just reconnect with them as well.
Yeah.
Uh,
Also, just go watch that video and leave a like on it because it's awesome, and
it,
you need that in your life.
Yeah, if you need to pick me up, you definitely need to watch that video because it definitely like it put a smile on my face for a good couple hours after watching it because it was just such a burst of joy and positivity that it was just there's no reason not to watch that video. So yeah, feel free Doxa Toronto and go check out that video as well as all of our devos and previous gatherings and just everything we ever host other than movie club that we do connected into there.
Yeah.
Second one is about Blessup. So this is a texting ministry that various workers with our chapter at YU GTA have started. They send about 3 texts a week. They do things on their Instagram, which is at YU_Blessup, and just sending like really encouraging text messages and things like that. I know I've kind of promoted them in the past. One thing that I did want to mention is that they kind of offer more than just text. So what I'm going to do right now is actually go onto their website and show you guys. So let me go into the screen share. Look, we're itty bitty, Alan, itty bitty people. And so all you have to do is type in yugta.ca, not a comma, a dot, and then /blessup. And you'll actually go to their webpage and it talks about the ministry and all this other stuff. But it also has these other various areas in which you can do. So they have Lift Up here, which if you have a prayer request and you want to send it anonymously to our team of youth workers, I'm on that team, as well as a wide variety of very caring and wonderful youth workers that are a part of this ministry, part of YUGTA. Paula, who was on stream during our first season, we'll be praying for you for that specific thing. So please feel free to use that as a resource. Speak up. If you want to give some feedback of your experience or anything, you just type in that and give them kind of your feedback on what's going on and then link up. So what they've done is with myself and other people from our other youth workers from YUGTA is that if you want to have a connection with a youth worker, not necessarily in regards to like specifically counseling or anything, but just having someone to kind of text you and send you kind of walk some things or talk some things out with you, this is an avenue and a resource available to you. So all you have to do is sign up if you haven't already. Also wanted to encourage you, not just teens can sign up for this, okay? Parents, youth workers, if you want to know what your teens are receiving from Blessup, you can sign up and get all the know. So I'm going to actually do that right now because I'm not officially signed up, but I'm going to. So Subanic, there I am. I'm not going to type in my phone number because this is the internet. I am going to do this because everyone knows how to email, where you live, okay, and then what age. So this is, unfortunately, if you're under the age of 11, you won't be receiving any texts, just liability things and things like that. But you just type into it and look, there's an over 26. I will be typing that. And then other information, how you heard about it. You can even, if you want it, just say, Sue told me. Or, don't bother. That's okay too. And then you just push submit. And that's it. So I'm actually going to take my phone right now. Watch me go. And I'm going to do this right now.
Yeah.
I have
So
it
they can
already
put,
looked up. I just need to put my phone number in.
so they can say Youth Unlimited staff or social media platform or website. And being on social media platform website, I see there's 2 thumbs underneath your video. What should people do with that?
2 thumbs. Well, if you like what you see, which is me helping us all talk about movies, or more of Alan on Monday Movie Club, please feel free to give us a like. And even if you see an arrow with a little swoosh that's a share button, you can share this with your friends.
Mm, that's a good strategy. But what if I want to know how to get these videos, just when they're coming out or anything else you're putting out on your YouTube channel?
So there's also a button. Thanks, Alan. There's also a button where you can
I've successfully
subscribe to my
distracted you.
channel, but you should more importantly subscribe to Docs of Toronto because as I hit my microphone, there we go. We're all flawed. Um, there, I link all of our live streams onto Docs of Toronto as well. So if you're subscribed to Docs of Toronto, you will not miss these. But but you can also subscribe here to connect. But look, guys, I did it. I'm going to receive Blessup text now. And it's just that simple. I did it in a minute, under a minute. So if that's something that you are interested in and you'd like to take part in, if you haven't already, please do so. I know it feels a bit like a commercial, Amy. I do. But this is really an initiative I support and encourage. I'm not confirming nor denying Alan's coming back, only because this next movie is our last movie for season 2. And so I don't know what's going to happen in the future after season 2. Um, so we're going to see what happens. So for next week, our movie, first of all, I want to thank everybody for posting in the comments and in the chat your suggestions for a Christmas movie, since we are now in Advent and we get to celebrate Christmas, and it's so exciting. Um, Unfortunately, a lot of the movies that you suggested are not readily available for streaming. You can rent them, you can purchase them, but they're not really like available on Netflix right now or available on Disney Plus right now. And so I want to honor these suggestions. And so later on in this month, after our next live stream, I'll post on the Instagram using the hashtag Monday Movie Club a list of those suggestions because they are really good movies that you and your family can maybe look into watching during the Christmas holiday if you're thinking about what you could watch while we're on break. So just consider that. But with all that said, next week's movie, we haven't this season watched a brand new film. And a brand new Christmas movie has released, and it's come with incredible reviews, 98 or 95% fresh on Rotten Tomatoes. It's been fantastic. And even one of our very own that has come occasionally onto Movie Club just watched it and said it was incredible and gave me some of his insights that I'll share on live stream. And so we're going to watch Jingle Jangle, A Christmas Journey, which is a Netflix streaming movie from just this year. It's kind of like if a musical decided to happen in a steampunk Christmas universe. It's really cool. I really enjoyed it. And there's so much to talk about within it. So that's going to be our movie, and we're going to come back here on December 14th to watch that. It is available streaming on Netflix. I'm not quite sure if it's available rented anywhere else, but feel free to take a look. I know many of you have it on Netflix there. Alan, thank you so much for joining us tonight. Really appreciate you and just your insights and what you bring to our community, as well as your family being a part of everything tonight. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for having me. Yeah, it's not a muscle I get to flex a lot in terms of breaking down a movie and enjoying it, but yeah, I've really enjoyed it, and I hope my not too contrived encouragement to get people to like and subscribe to your channel might pay you some dividends, because I appreciate everything you do.
Thank you, Alan. I really appreciate that. But this is going to be great. So thank you very much for watching. So our last live stream is going to be 2 weeks from now on December 14th. Please stay safe, stay healthy, and stay connected. And we look forward to seeing you next time. Have a great night, everybody.
Don't forget to call your mom and give her a hug.
Oh, yeah, do that. Call your mom, give her a hug. Thanks,
Verbal
everybody.
hug, I guess, but yeah.
Absolutely. Bye, everybody.